Hey guys, welcome back to Covenant Canon. It's been a while since I've done these casual videos such as these, but with the recent drought in the last months regarding Halo's content and my own personal life getting in the way of things, I've decided to start doing some more of my top 5 or top 10 videos moving forward. I'll be making these videos while still working on the heavy hitter videos I usually make. So to kickstart this initiative, I'll be listing certain story arcs and plot lines in the Halo universe that I feel deserve more attention. And of course, seeing as this is a Covenant channel, I'll be listing out certain Covenant and Banish related subjects that I think deserve the attention. But if you guys have certain story arcs that you feel 343 should address more, feel free to post them in the comments below. For everyone else, this is my top 5 Halo plot lines that deserve more attention. Number 5. The Ussans and the Refuge. At the end of Halo Broken Circle, we see the broken shield world called the Refuge reformed, and its Ussan colonists reconnected with Zoreskin and his Sangheili allies. Yet, we know little or nothing about what happened to them afterwards. The only thing we do know is that in the epilogue of Broken Circle, certain Ussans returned back to Sanghelios, just before the civil war, known as the Blooding Years, broke out. It would have been nice to see what the Arbiter might have think of the existence of this Sangheili subculture, and what the Ussans might have thought about the Covenant War, humanity, and the Blooding Years afterwards. It would have been interesting to see what kind of stance Baltol Zealous would have taken in the Civil War. Would he have joined the Swords of Sanghelios, or would he take a neutral stance in the fighting? And how would the Ussans treat humanity, for instance? Would they treat them as infidels as the Covenant did? Or would they treat them more like equals, kind of like the Swords of Sanghelios do? All these things would be an excellent way to present any further sequel to Broken Circle moving forward in the future. And I would love to see more character development between Zoreskin and Baltol Zealous. I would love to see what kind of relationship they made, especially knowing the beef between their ancestors. Number 4. The Covenant Refugees on Earth. In the opening cutscene of Halo 4's Spartan Ops, Spartan Hoya mentions that there were Covenant asylum seekers on Earth, in Rio to be specific. This seems largely unimportant at the time, but as the years went on, we're no closer to understanding why members of the Covenant would seek sanctuary on Earth of all places. After all the Alien Alliance did to Africa and other places on the planet, I can't imagine they would be warmly welcomed, to say the least. Though this topic has been briefly touched on in Halo Renegades, nothing else has popped up regarding the asylum seekers. It would be an interesting topic to see what motivated them to come to the UEG for aid, and how would the government treat them? Would they treat them like any other human asylum seekers from the insurrections? Or would they treat them like secondhand citizens? More importantly, how would the population of Earth react to them? Personally, I can imagine there would be protests and even riots spreading across Earth. For many of these people lost loved ones during the Covenant's invasion on Earth. And hell, even throughout the entire 30 years of war against the Covenant and its member species. And these members seeking refuge on Earth would be a very sore subject to touch on. If 343 ever decides to touch on this subject again in any book or comic, I can definitely see this touching on a lot of war prejudice, and I can see this connecting a lot to Legacy of Onyx, what we got with Meli Patera and Asumum Dama, Gadam, and other children from the Pax Institute and Pax Apollos. It could definitely send a message of forgiveness and moving on from a terrible war. Number 3. Yapyap's Rebellion. When Halo Wars 2 introduced us to Yapyap the Destroyer and allowed us to play as him in multiplayer, it introduced us to something rather interesting. He currently leads a rebellion against Atriox and the Banished, as well as fighting against the UNSC Spirit of Fire's forces on the Ark. And for those of you who think this is not canon, recent entries from the Halo Encyclopedia of last year confirms this to be a canon thing. Which begs the question, what truly started it? When? Why? Could it have happened before or after the main story? Or maybe sometime before Awakening the Nightmare? I've always wondered these things, and still I wonder how other members of the Banished feel about this sudden rebellion with impunity, and specifically what Cutter thought of it as well, if indeed he knew about them at all. Personally, I think it would be fun to have it as a short story of a banished grunt who's deciding to defect to the rebellion, and ultimately fighting them. And it could also introduce us to a banished commander trying to seek them out, as a way of increasing his glory and standing within the banished. Anything like this would be a neat idea to expand the lore of Yapyap's insurrection, and what usage it had to Atriox's cause. Number 2. The Half-Jaw's Quest. With the death of Tembetek and the Minister of Preparation at the end of Shadow of Intent, Rtas Vadum vows to find the remaining Sanshayum in the galaxy. Since then, I've been desperately waiting for when and how this mission would unfold. Though we know nothing of Rtas after the events of Shadow of Intent, in Divine Wind, we learn that the remaining prophets have been heading to a shield world called Cloister. Whether or not they reach this place at all is still to be determined. But it would be fascinating to see how Rtas would learn of this location and how he would find it. Moreover, it would be interesting to see how Rtas and his crew would treat the remaining Sanshayum. Would they treat them as enemies as they did with the Prelate and the Minister? Or would they be treated fairly? For me, this arc could be a good closure to the animosity between the Prophets and the Elites since the end of Halo 2. Both have been wounded after years of fighting one another, and it seems their resentments have only gotten worse as time passed. Perhaps during this quest, Rtas might find a way of reconciling the Sanshayum without entirely exterminating them, while giving us more morally gray Prophet characters. So far, we have only Zoreskin and Tembetek. More characters like them would definitely make some interesting plotlines for any follow-ups to this favorite novella of mine. Number 1. The Blooding Years. Ever since the Sangheili Civil War broke out at the end of Halo Glasslands, there has been little to no information we know about it, except for some offhand accounts. However, we do know that this war, known as the Blooding Years, started not long after the events of Halo 3, when the Arbiter signed a peace treaty with Lord Hood. While it was given a lot of attention in the Sanghelios missions of Halo 5 Guardians, it wasn't nearly as expanded as I would have liked. And frankly, that barely scratched the surface of how this conflict has affected the Sangheili as a people, or to what effect it has on the other colonies and throughout. There is so much potential on how this era could easily build up character development for fan favorites, like the Halo 3 co-op characters Uze Taham and Ento Shram, or better yet, the Arbiter. Since Halo 2, we've seen his abilities as a warrior, and in the expanded media, we learned his capabilities as a commander at war. But the Blooding Years could be an excellent opportunity for us to see what trials and tribulations he faced as he transitions from a simple soldier to a leader for all the Sangheili, and how he becomes a true symbol of what the galaxy could become. I can definitely see the Blooding Years being played out in either book, comic book, or even a spin-off game. Perhaps we could have a role-playing type of game, kind of like what we have with Skyrim, or we can have a third-person game, kind of like what we have with Gears of War, or maybe with Assassin's Creed. The Blooding Years has a lot of potential, which I really hope 343 touches on in the future.